Okay, good morning, everyone. This is Ron. Sunday morning, January 5th, and a little after 11 a.m., so we'll get started. Yesterday, we were talking about Exodus 1, and I want to go back there because we've had some questions to come up. Uh, Someone saw had some insight into the midwives, and I thought it was very relevant. So hopefully we could look at that one more time. Uh,
My glad right there.
you guys, everybody, if you don't mind, mute, please. And someone also asked me about the Nile River because I didn't bother that yesterday because I didn't. There was something there that I did not quite see and still don't quite see it. But I give you opportunity if any of the teachers have looked at that and want to discuss it. Uh, but I want to kind of look at this again because the other part of this that I kind of didn't mention yesterday. If Joseph means to increase, God has increased, what does it mean that Joseph died? So maybe we could look at that today. Uh, the only other thing I had was and Pastor is going to join us here in just a bit, but I did not want to look at this politically, but I want to know from a humanitarian perspective, maybe, what does it mean that Jimmy Carter died? What what is if that has any significance on this journey or not? But but I'll start first and see if you guys have any thoughts or questions. Anybody? Okay. Has did any of you guys give any thought to the Jimmy Carter thing that hit you at all? That something come to you from that? And again, we know the political side of it, and but is there anything else spiritually that you see in that or that you felt from that?
Good morning, Ron. This is Jackie.
Hey, Jackie.
And the morning, the fact that how humble he was. He came from humble means, and he wanted to return to humble means. That's what stood out to me. He lived that life as being just humble, and he didn't forget where he came from. That's what stood out to me.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, good morning, Ron. This is GC in Philly. I think also, he brought out the significance of his relationship with his wife and how much he truly appreciated, that union and what it meant for him and to him. And so it was, inspiring just to hear him, speak of that, before he transitioned. I'm done.
I think both of those are excellent points. The other one that I thought of, George, is anybody that talks about him recognizes him as a person more than they did as a politician. You know, a lot of them you don't think of in that regard. You see the quote unquote things they did in office or whatever, and those things have been discussed as well, versus negative and positive if you want to look at it that way. But as you mentioned though, the humanitarian things and him as a husband and father seem to be echoed very loudly. So, uh, as we come into this new year and about to go into an inauguration, I just thought that maybe someone saw something there that may symbolize or uh, that may have spoken to you. But thank you.
Hey, Ryan, good morning. This is Audrey.
Hey, Audrey.
I kind of feel like even though he was he was probably the most, in terms of religion, he was
Mhm.
probably the most devout president we've had in a long time, but
Yeah,
yet he was maligned for that. Um, but I think what we saw in his life is that he lived his truth. Um, and he wasn't swayed from that. And because of that, he was able to build a rather um, a rather good legacy in terms of what he stood for and what he did um, for mankind. Um, so I think even though he is dying, his truth is still living.
yeah,
In terms of what he did for a lot of people around the world, because the Carter Center did a lot of healthcare work. Um, his Because of his vision, he eradicated guinea worm in Africa,
yeah,
and that was a really big deal. Um, and he also did a lot to promote what we call democracy. Um, but he was all about people having a voice.
yeah,
So I think even though he passes on, his truth still lives. And I think that's an example of the fact that, look at us, even though we we have been um, enslaved and out of Africa for 400 years, we're still finding the truth, going back to beginning. So truth still lives. Anyway,
amen.
that's what I see in it.
Thank you. As you were talking, I was also thinking of his beginning. Although his father was a successful farmer, peanut farmer, his father was very racist person, and he came through all of that. Because you had to know that in rural Georgia, that could not have been easy to fight some of the battles that he did and take on some of the initiatives that he championed, and uh, knowing that about his background and those who were a very intimate part of his life. So I just think it was interesting at this point in time where we are in history, where we are as a nation, and why everything is being uprooted and being examined. And the inauguration is right around the corner. Here is somebody who is symbolic of being a humanitarian and caring and having compassion for people has died. And that I don't think is a coincidence. So,
I don't even. Good morning, everyone. I don't think it's
morning.
coincidental at all. However, I don't know whether you've talked about this or not. I I see it as a very strong voice speaking to what is coming on the 20th. The flag is supposed to be a half mast until the end of the month, and Trump is railing against it because he doesn't want the flag at half mast during his inauguration. I think it speaks to a spiritual truth, and that is the flag being at half mast means that some dignitaries died, and the flag being at half mast during the inauguration or even during this month of the inauguration for that matter, speaks to the idea of death to the incoming administration that is already dead before it even gets started. Does that make sense? Can you see that?
Yeah.
But yes, and past, if I may allude to what you're saying, also Martin Luther King Day is celebrated on the day of his inauguration. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct. So there are a lot of things that are coinciding, and as I believe, I think all of us believe the same thing in that there are no coincidences. Things happen the way they are supposed to, and the arrogance of not wanting the flag to fly half-mast because of inauguration. I think that is something inside of him that senses what is actually what the universe is actually the message is sending to him. That makes sense, guys.
It does make sense. I guess it surprised me that he would be that astute, though, be that in tune to this to recognize that.
I'm not talking about his intellect. I'm talking about
Right.
something within
Okay.
that. That's the thing that tells you a car is down, police is down the road.
Uh-huh.
That feeling that he's getting. I don't think he has analyzed it the way that we are talking about it, but I think he feels something about why would this flag be a half mast because of the death of a Democrat president and it's my inauguration. So it's more about arrogance and selfishness than it is about anything else. Yet the message is the same from the universe.
Thank you. Anyone else?
This is Vermel. I have a question. I
Yes,
was
ma'am.
watching a review of his life, and there was an interview where he said he was influenced by a black woman who was a carekeeper in his household, his parents' household. Does that tie into the African queen sitting on the throne?
Anywhere you see African femininity influencing in a very spiritual, positive way, that is an example of it. See, what we have to begin to see is that when we talk about the cosmic mother sitting on the throne, we're not talking about an individual person. We are talking about an energy source. We're talking about feminine energy being the guiding force for humanity. So it's not an individual at all. It is a manifestation of feminine energy. Does that make sense for me?
Yes, it does. I guess I'm trying to express what I was thinking. Um, so that's the kinetic energy that reigns throughout the universe that he exemplified,
That she exemplified,
that she exemplified, that he,
picked up on.
okay, thank
Um,
you.
that's a message within itself.
Well, before you speak to it, Pastor, I thought I saw that too. Part of that I thought was fascinating is the family completely trusted her. She get him anytime she wanted to, and they go for walks, or she take him fishing. So she was very influential in his life. It wasn't just a passing thing, oh, I see you at my house. She took him outside of the home to do things with him. And I thought that was very interesting.
Ron,
Yes,
also,
ma'am.
I was thinking about when he was knowing that he was at, the end of life. When he was asked what he wanted to do, he said, "I want to live long enough to vote for Kamala Harris."
And I thought that was, awesome because he wasn't thinking about himself, he was thinking about mankind.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I did not know that part.
Yeah.
So a lot of things we discuss, we may not always see everything that's out there to be seen, but I think these discussions have a way of bringing enlightenment to mankind, have a way of uncovering things, have a way of showing appreciation for goodness and compassion that we are aware of. And so much appreciation for you, your thoughts and your energy in this direction.
And
I think it speaks to, yes, sir.
go ahead. I'm sorry. Speaks to what?
No, go ahead. I think it speaks to who we are and the things that we attract to us.
Okay.
So
Um, I don't know at what point I may have to get off, but I'll stay on as long as I can. Um, that also to me speaks to the idea, the concept of the invisible womb seed. We don't see it with our eyes, but we see the manifestation of it. In other words, we see the results of the life that it produces. That the potentiality that's in that womb seed means that everyone has the potential to be who they were created to be. And primarily, if the African does not manifest in this realm who it was created to be, there will be absolutely zero changes in the trajectory of humanity. Humanity will end in a self-destructive manner. However, understanding that the womb seed is simply speaking about the seed in the womb that has constant, continuous potential to bring into existence everything that's necessary to bring balance to humanity and to revive the earth so that it can be as productive as it was created to be for the sustaining of natural life in the earth. Does that make sense?
now to back up a little further, where does the term come from? We've heard it before. You and George have mentioned that term womb seed.
The womb seed comes from one of the books that we were reading. It comes from one of the books that we were reading. And it talked about the seed, the womb seed being in the primordial waters of noon. However, I prefer saying it the way that we are accustomed to hearing with those words we're accustomed to. It is a seed of potentiality that is in the universe. And excuse me, because all of us are the universe and the universe is us, that potentiality of that seed is in every one of us. And the reason it's called a womb is because it's in a place where it can maturate. And the maturation of it is based upon your desire and to know who you are and your efforts to not only maintain the understanding of who you are, but also to your efforts to understand what your mission is now that you know who you are. So when we talk about a womb seed, we're talking about a spermatozoa, manifested rather by a spermatozoa being in a womb and coupling with an egg to produce something. But the spiritual aspects of it is that there is always a seed in the womb waiting to germinate for the express purpose of birthing. Does that make sense? Or questions
Yeah.
about that?
Is that the same thing as the seed of divinity that
Yes,
each of
ma'am.
us has?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Robert. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, and good morning, Pastor. And also, when we talk about the womb seed, we're basically, talking about the spiritual concept or the spiritual essence of the movement of matter within the waters of none. And in the movement in the waters of none, it moves matter from energy at rest to energy in motion. And so now we're seeing the creativity, with regards to that spiritual concept manifesting. And this is where, that harmony manifests in terms
You're
of,
frozen, George.
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Yeah, yeah. So again, I'm just basically saying that matter from energy at rest to energy in motion. And so when we speak about it in terms of um, the cosmic mother, again, I can see it in relationship to um, not looking at it as an individual, but looking at it in terms of as so above, so below, we can begin to see how movement moves in terms of the creations of creations, if that resonates. But I just wanted to share those thoughts in terms of, that matter, which is the eternal waters of none, and how the three became one.
So,
I'm done.
George, are
Go
you
ahead.
saying, are you saying that when you say um, the energy at rest to the energy in motion, right?
Mhm.
So the womb seed would be energy at rest, meaning that you're not utilizing the divine energy uh, that you are, because you are seeing everything with your eyes, and your functionality is based on what you see with your eyes in this earth. However, when you begin to search spiritually, that is the womb seed, or that is the matter that begins to move, meaning that it begins to birth something. It begins to bring to the surface who you are. It begins to show you things that are spiritual, as opposed to lying dormant within you.
Yes, and again, that speaks about, the proverb, man or woman, know thyself. And so what we're basically seeing is the spirituality manifesting, in that way, that we're not just looking at it from a logical perspective, but just being able to appreciate the creations of us being the creators that we are, and now being able to see the manifestations of our desires, the manifestations that's coming from our heart and from our soul. So, yes, I concur with what you're saying in terms of what that means.
An important
I guess
aspect of what you both just said, right?
no, go ahead, Barb.
I see, for me, an important aspect of what you both have said is that everything is potential. And when it's potential, it's at rest. What creates is when it's in movement. And so there has to be that spiritual essence that we're aware of that creates our desires, the intents of our desires. So I just want to make the point that everything at rest is potential. There's the possibility, there's the inevitability, there's the goal. All of that is rest, but it's the spiritual essence that invigorates it, that potential, and starts the creation of what could be as a manifestation into what is, if that resonates.
Yeah, excuse me. Some of what you said, I missed. When you were talking, I thought of an example, maybe see if it bodes well for what we're talking about. It's like a kernel of corn. It's at rest. until you put it in the womb of the earth, the ground. And then it's in motion because it begins to become what it was created to be. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
So that's the picture I got when you were talking about that.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the picture I saw was heaven and earth. I see a new heaven and a new earth. George talked about uh, as is above, so is below. The heavens being that which is potential, that which has all the light. And as you start your motion being your thoughts, your energy, your desires, you create from that potential. So there is no separation between the womb seed. There is no separation between heaven and earth. And even in your example, there is no life if the corn does not be put in darkness, be put in a place where it can grow. So uh,
You know,
Pastor,
excuse
I'm
me.
sorry.
Go ahead.
You just brought life to the scripture that says, if the wheat falls, oh my God, this happens to me.
If a corn of
well-
grain falls into the ground,
Yeah, that.
yeah.
You just gave meaning. I want to read it to you. Hold on a moment. This thing. Let me go back. I'm sorry.
That's okay. While you were looking for it,
Okay,
you got it?
I got it.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Go
This
ahead.
is in John 12, 24, and 26. Verily, verily, I say unto you, except a grain of wheat fall into the earth and die, it abideth by itself alone. But if it die, it beareth much fruit. He that loveth his life loses it, and he that hateth his life in the world shall keep it until life eternal. To me, that's what you just explained.
It's also what you just read is also Elohim. One yet many.
Okay, I can
Yeah.
see that.
If you're not willing, excuse me, if you're not willing to die to self, then you never find your place within the family of divinity. Selfishness can't exist within the family of divinity. So that I see that as being a manifestation of recognizing that you're Elohim, one yet many. So
Thank you.
and you're welcome. Thank you. There are quite a few scriptures in there that speaks to us in that vein. I don't want to go in another direction, so go ahead. Ron, just back to you.
um do you feel like you need to go in that direction? No?
I don't know. Only thing I was going to talk about is the scripture manifestation, the scripture message about um, the mindsets.
Okay.
When it talks about for the well, let me start it this way. Ask yourself this question: who or what is your enemy? And I want you to ponder that for a couple of seconds. Who and what is your enemy? If I were to ask each of you that, what would your response be? Who or what is your enemy? from a spiritual perspective. The scripture says that for the enemy has come to steal, to kill, to rob, and to destroy. Does it not? But I have
Yes.
come that you may have life more abundantly. The mindset, the European mindset that we talked about, that's what that scripture is talking about. That's the enemy, that mindset. That's not the enemy to you individually. That's the enemy of righteousness. That's the enemy of the principles of Mayat. That's the enemy of balance. That's the enemy of beauty. That's the enemy of the embracing of spirituality. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Does that so? When I'm beginning to see, I'm sure some of you, if not all of you, doing the same thing, is seeing the scripture in a totally different light, because the truth that the attempt was made to sift the truth out of it, but you cannot destroy truth. So what's happening is that the sifting took place, but the truth remained in the midst of that chaos that was created. And the only time that it remains chaotic is when we begin to see it ritualistically through our eyes, as opposed to making efforts to understand it and see with our eye. There are so many classic examples of that we get caught up in. When we talk about holidays, those holidays are not designed for the purpose of you being enlightened. Holidays are designed for the purpose of control and manipulation. Think about it this way. How many of you celebrated Thanksgiving? Whenever you celebrate Thanksgiving, what are you doing? Every one of us has celebrated Thanksgiving. Nick raised his hand, but all of us, you raise your hand for all of us.
Yeah.
Where every time we celebrate Thanksgiving, we are celebrating the massacre of 70 million people. We are celebrating the entrance and the colonization of this landmass. We are celebrating the deception that hospitality was met with. The indigenous people of this land, as you know, were very hospitable, but their hospitality resulted in their demise. So what was it, 1625 maybe, that the indigenous people and the Europeans came together to celebrate. No, 1621, when they came together to celebrate the first year of being in this country, or on this landmass. And following that, the indigenous people were met with hostility and barbaric acts of murder. And in 1865, Abraham Lincoln made Thanksgiving a holiday and of celebration. It was first set up in July, but it was changed to November. But he did not do it to celebrate the entrance of the colonizers. Well, the reason Abraham Lincoln did it was an effort to bring the North and the South together, to pull the country back together, So we see that holidays are designed to control the movement, the thoughts, the actions of the people who are celebrating those holidays. And we can go down the line to every single one of them and see that the majority of the holidays that are celebrated, they are either religious or they pertain to this country. And each one of them are about manipulation. Even the king holiday, manipulation. Go ahead.
When
Go
you
ahead.
talked about the enemy comes to steal, kill, destroy, blah, 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 and that enemy is the European mindset. So are you saying then that when I understand who I am and I no longer embrace the European mindset, whether that be selfishness or whatever, then does that mean I have no enemy?
No, it does not. It means that you recognize the enemy. And when you recognize the enemy, you also recognize that the enemy is from within. And you make every effort to mitigate that enemy within by holding on to, by embracing more tightly the idea of who you are, or the reality of who you are in terms of being Elohim. Make sense, Bob? Bob Jane?
Yes, it does.
Okay. So we are never without enemy. The question is, how do you deal with it? Do you allow the enemy to become, do you allow yourself to become an enemy to that? Or do you allow yourself to become the restorer of the breach, or the transform, or the source of transformative energy that transforms that mindset into a mindset that embraces and enhances it and has a desire to enhance the stability of humanity?
So you're saying instead of allowing ourselves to be overcome by the enemy, we overcome the enemy by the energy, truth, and righteousness.
Of righteousness. You finished, Barbara?
Yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah.
asking that.
You're right. Yes, that's how we overcome it. And see, this is the main part of that to me is this. Just because the European mindset is the enemy to humanity, it doesn't mean that the mindset of a Kabbalah is an enemy to the European mindset. It is not. It is a transformative energy so that that European mindset would no longer be destructive to humanity. Does that make sense?
They perceive it as the enemy.
Yeah.
Just to add to that, without interrupting, sorry, but and that is the source of their, well, that perception of that being the enemy is also the source of the pathology that is that sort of at the core of that mindset, and the source of the thing that needs to be ultimately healed if humanity is not going to destroy itself. And they, for whatever reason, are repulsed by that just because they have identified so much with that pathology, with
Right.
that confusion. So they see that as being attacking their identity, but it is the identity they have find themselves within the context of ignorance and selfishness. Anyway, thank you.
No, thank you.
Hey, Rip, this is Charles.
Mhm.
Okay, when you got going back to Cain and Abel, and God was accepting Abel's gift, and Cain was upset with that, and God told Cain, you know, if you do good, he was accept his gift. He not didn't say it the way I'm saying it, but I'm coming to a point.
Mhm.
He said, sin is crouching at your door, or evil is crouching at your door. So this is something like that with us. Everybody looking for evil to be here and now, or they're looking for a person to be in front of, always kicking it and messing with him. It's not. God is not talking about it. He's talking about that evil part it's in you that you wrestle with.
Yes,
So, same.
yes. When it talks about sin crouching at the door, it's always there. Entanglements are always there. The question is, how are you going to view them? And even if you get entangled, how are you going to be disentangled? And do you recognize the difference between an entanglement and a partnership or an intertwining of energy that will bring strength to you, to humanity? Because entanglements or something, entanglements are different than coalitions. And I use that word coalition for the lack of a better term. A coalition could look like an entanglement, because if we were to talk and have these discussions in the midst of religious people, then they would accuse us of being entangled with a cult, when it's not an entanglement at all. It's a coalition desiring righteousness for all of humanity, as opposed to being caught up in something that is antithetical to the spiritual nature of our being. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Thank you.
So, Jimmy Carter had a heart for humanity. I'm thinking that's what they colored black person, whatever was. He was always with her and family in mind, and she was always teaching him, probably teaching him about being homo to humanity.
Well, yeah, her actions towards him, the best way to teach somebody is through your actions more effectively. And there are so many other aspects to Jimmy Carter's life that are not public, and I won't discuss them publicly. Hold on for 1 second, please. I need to take this. This is from the hospital. Go ahead, Ron or Audrey.
Anybody else, any questions or comments on where we are?
Good morning, Ron. This is Jackie again. And
Hey, Jack.
I hope I heard this correctly. Yeah, I do realize that the inauguration and MLK Day, they fall on the same day, but I think I heard that, well, my dad had the TV on some channel with Al Sharpton. And I want to think I heard him say they're going to be protesting on the other side of Washington, but I wasn't sure what they were going to be protesting. Did anybody else hear that, or can anybody else add to that? I just wasn't sure what they were going to be protesting. And with that being said, I was just kind of like, I pray that, you know, everybody's safe, basically.
Yeah. Jackie,
So I
personally,
wasn't
I
sure if
have not
anybody else
heard
heard
that.
that.
I have not, but if someone else want to address it, uh,
I have not heard anything, even though I live in DC, but
Yeah.
I probably will not be going into the office on that day or a couple days on either side of inauguration day.
Yeah. It might be a wise thing, Nicholas. I have not heard it either.
Yeah.
It would surprise me though, but I have not heard it. One of the things that I do believe that we are obligated to look at is um, if it is indeed a protest, the question is why. And the why will guide us to the spiritual meanings of it. Because again, we have to be able to read the signs of the time. And everything that happens is a message. And regardless of what takes place, I implore you to maintain your status as to knowing who you are, as opposed to allowing it to shift your focus into a space called fear, or a space where you are this what becomes unstable in your emotions, because emotional instability results have bad results, I should say, because emotional instability means that you don't have a handle on who you are, and you need to step back from what you are experiencing and remind yourself of who you are, so that you can bring stability to your emotions. I'm done.
thank you. On yesterday, why, as mentioned to you, Exodus 1, I intentionally look for stuff that I think speaks to us, to strengthen us, to show us who we are, show us what the journey, or remind us of the journey that we've taken, and even bring us to a deeper awareness of the necessity of what we do. And I like that chapter because it does, to me, speak to us on several layers. And yesterday, some texts and some the people, someone mentioned midwives, and although we talked about it, I thought it was worth looking at again because uh and I don't want to put anybody on the spot, so if you care to speak to it, but they saw a lot more into that than I did. And what we mentioned yesterday was Pua, which was one of the midwives' name, mean to glitter, or to shine, or to illuminate. The other one was Shifra, that means to be fair, to be beautiful. So she spoke to balance. And I said to us, we are midwives. We stand in the midst of humanity as to what enlightenment looks like, or the path anyway. And uh, not only for our ancestors, but for those who are in the earth. So did anybody want to talk about midwives anymore? Tell me what you see there, and looking at that from a spiritual perspective, just open that up to us.
Hello, Ron. This is Lavon.
Hey, Levon.
Hi. Yeah, yesterday, I think it was Evelyn, and she brought up the importance of midwives and said that spiritual direction, and that kind of, and then she asked for it to be open, and like you said, there wasn't a lot of discussion on it, but it still kind of gave me reason to say, well, there has to be more to this. And as I was trying to research and the names the spiritual meaning of their names, I did find the same thing as you did, with Sephra being fairness and beauty, and Pua being shine. But as I was looking it up, this one gentleman that was discussing and talking about the importance of the midwives and the spiritual, we need spiritual midwives. And he was saying, because Exodus was written by and about men, these women only received a few lines, but they were icons. And that perked me to say, okay, they were icons, because initially in my life, a midwife meant one who helped deliver a child, a baby. But as I was looking at it, I realized that from this spiritual journey of work, of listening on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, that my journey has been transformed because of all of everyone being midwives. And what I mean by that was, when I looked up the spiritual direction, it wasn't just about the birth, it was about ability to spiritually see and coach and push, guide someone through a transitional or transformational moment. And the one important thing I came out of it is that with my journey, this transformation as a spiritual midwife can help bring about states of consciousness that allow for powerful transformations that help to achieve a greater sense of self-knowledge, of knowing who you are. And everyone on this call, if we're Elohim, if we're a spiritual midwife, this is exactly what's happening. And that really enlightened me and gave me that this is my journey. And now, and then the guy did say one thing that was interesting to me as I was reading it. He said, a person who can't be directed often complains they are without guidance. And so in order to guide someone, you have to realize they have to and want to be guided. They have to be open. They have to want this transformation. And I just felt that my whole journey was this transformation. And what they said, I could consider pastor as that midwife for me, that put me in that spiritual direction. So that's what I wanted to share about midwives.
Thank you very much.
I
Very
love that.
Yeah.
I
sorry.
love that, LaVon,
Yeah.
because one of the things I looked at as it relates to midwife too is the root of it comes from the same as potter's wheel, which are two stools and they're linked together. And a potter's wheel is where the potter molds and kneads and the clay and designs something of beauty. So the concept that you just talked about is the same spiritually, where the midwife guides the fetus out of the womb and spiritually, as you just said, pours into that fetus all of the guidance that's needed. So they're both from the same root. And so I just wanted you to know that really resonated with me.
And when you said that, Barbara, one of the things that this gentleman mentioned was being reborn. And so that was the same thing. It's like, yes, we have already came through our mother's womb and the midwife may have helped, but that rebirth is also part of it. And what you just said there made me think about the rebirth. Who was it? Nicodemus? Yeah, talked about how can I be reborn, but that's that rebirth.
Talk about the portion of it too, because even after the baby comes through the birth canal, there still has to be care for the baby and the mother.
And well, the other
Oh,
thing is that
yeah. Go
midwife
ahead.
is also godly women who will always choose to protect life. That was a lesson that one of the lessons that as I was researching this, it said that godly women will always protect and providing care. They sometimes more than just the mother who's there, they provide the care for the patient and not just that baby, but also for the families that are uh, uh, loving this child, that are waiting for this child to be born. So the midwife also provides that type of, but basically a protection of life.
Yeah.
And that protection of life, midwife also recognizes any potential problems with that birth and moves to correct them before they become an endangerment to the baby that's being birthed or to the life of the mother. Um, I was birthed by a midwife, by the way, and a lot of the things that I thought about over the years in terms of a midwife and things I've read. I read about the midwives in Hawaii and how the U.S. government is trying to force them out of their vocation. And what they found is that um, when a baby is birthed in a hospital by doctors, their chances of survival are less than it is with a midwife, as well as for the mother giving birth. And they also found that they are healthier when delivered by a midwife than they are in a hospital setting. And the allusion was to the idea of using the use of drugs, also the presence of the energy of those who are doing the delivery makes a difference in how the delivery takes place.
Hey, Pastor. Um, Let us know what was the reason why they took it out of the midwife hands so that it be put in the hospital.
Because of the European mindset, money. Um, anything that's not approved by the government is considered a danger to the society. And I don't know, I just believe that. First of all, let's look at it this way. For thousands of years, for hundreds of thousands of years, all birth took place through a midwife. It is in recent history that birth were in the hands of a physician. And as far as we are as an African people living in this country, during a period, there was the overwhelming majority of all deliveries for Africans was through a midwife. And that did not change until integration. And it gradually changed during that period. So again, Charles, is all about the money and control.
Thank you, Pastor.
You're welcome, sir. Thank you. I'll
Like
take
the-
another step further.
Okay.
My mama, none of my aunts, my great aunts, my great uncles, none of them were delivered by a doctor. Every one of them was delivered by a midwife. And I would venture to say that I'm not the only one on this call whose aunts and uncles and grandparents did not experience the same thing. I'm not the only one on this call who had those experiences in their family. Am I right, guys?
You're right. Yeah, you are correct. As we just put this in perspective, the importance of this is there's nothing that a human can do that is more empowering and also more surrendering than being love and compassion for mankind. And as we talk about this being spiritual and a midwife, what are we saying as we step into this, as we look at this and gaining understanding, not only the historical perspective of it, but looking at it from as us moving forward.
I think Levon kind of sort of covered that.
Okay.
She was in her first presentation when she was talking about all of us are midwives.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it speaks to me of when you, as you were going, you mentioned in the beginning, uh, not stepping back into a place of fear, not stepping back to a place of confusion or your emotions getting caught up in stuff as we move forward and as this new year or opens itself up, is exposed to us. So anyway,
Before we leave this, I think it warrants at least a look at the other end of this. And the other end of it is a doula. I think it's called a doula. Am I right? The ones who help you die, the one who's there with you when you transition. Isn't
Yeah.
it called? Somebody help me.
Yeah.
I don't know
The,
that term.
the doula is also one who helps with birth too, the process. They just updated the midwife's name. But
Okay,
yeah.
so the process is the same. Barbara Jean, the process is helping you through birth and transition.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And
Okay.
that's also what they did mention, that with the midwives, that they help with the birth and death. And that yeah, I did kind of question the death part.
But I look at the death part also as being necessary because I remember, and I'm sure most of you can remember, when someone transitioned, they would bring the body home because they didn't feel they felt like no one. Now, first of all, they felt like no one should die alone. And secondly, they felt that that person, that body, needed to be in the presence of family because the transitional process had not been totally complete, and that body would stay in that house until time for the funeral. And even to this day, when especially the military, when someone is killed in battle, there's an escort for that body and stays with that body into burial. So it's almost like the midwife is from the beginning of birth into the earth to the rebirth into the spiritual realm. Because transition out of this body is another type of birth.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense,
Yeah.
Pat. And I think in terms of just the process of that life journey from the Kemetic teachings, it talks about conception to resurrection. And so in that process of conception, growth, aging, and when it talks about, decay and death, but that death is looked at in terms of the resurrection, which speaks of, the woman, in terms of that new birth. But
Love that. I like that. The resurrection. You're resurrected into being an ancestor. That makes sense to me.
Yes.
Yes.
Hello, everyone. This is Sheldon. On the heels of that, Pastor Richard, I was also thinking in terms of the midwife and the Abdullah. There's a connection one-on-one as well between that individual and the ancestors working along together. So in a sense, the Abdullah is comforting that soul, and in a sense, handing them off jointly with the ancestors, if you can imagine in your mind, the Abdullah walking hand in hand with that soul who is transitioning, and then handing it over to the ancestors. So safe and comfortable journey, or at least made as comfortable as possible, personalized for that individual soul and what they need and what is best for them in that process of both being born into this reality and transitioning out of it as well.
Thank you, sir.
I'm finished.
Thank you.
As you guys described this, I'm seeing something beautiful. Can you imagine you bring in life and you escort life to the other side. You're transitioning life the whole time. That's awesome. I never looked at that. I like that.
I have a question to ask. My question is there an Egyptian god or goddess that transport souls? I feel like there was. And is there a connection with that?
There is an escort, and the escort, from the Kemetic understandings, and someone helped me with this because I remember having read it several different places. Your heart is weighed in the balance, meaning that was taken into consideration the deeds that you've done while you were living in this body, and the one that escorts you to the Netherland is dependent upon how you lived in the deeds that you accomplished while you were in this earth. Now what I'm offering now is really a vague memory of having read that in several different places over time. But it does mention escorts, Myra. And I think one of them, one of the things I read, I believe that it talked about being weighed according to the principles of Mayat and having the energy of Mayat escort you to the netherworld. Anybody can help me with that? Has anybody read what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yes, Val, I've read this here.
Thank you.
But in pretty much every tradition, there's some idea that you are escorted through that process. And I believe that that is very correct. In that you are not ever alone, either now or then, and definitely not through that process.
Right. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, there are other aspects of this we could go into, and as I said, also I mentioned to you at the beginning, I want to look at a couple of things again, and I think might be a good place to take a pause right now because we've talked about a lot of stuff, but I want to take another look at Joseph, and someone asked a question about the Nile River. And I've looked at that, and I don't quite see anything concrete yet to as to what was taking place there, and might be something we could address at a different time, if you will. Are you guys okay with taking a pause here, or do you want to?
Well, I agree with taking a pause here. But as you were mentioning, now there are so many different aspects to that.
Yeah.
Because there are like, when you look at it as the Hopi River, it speaks to the idea of it means to be black because of the black settlement that flowed from the interior of Africa up to Egypt or to Kemet and flooded the plains, preparing them for planting, for the crops rather. So it's a lot involved in that, I think. So,
Yeah.
Coming to a place where we can, I guess, simplistically give a simplistic understanding of it may take a minute. That's all. Because I
And
think it's more than the black settlement. I think all that means something.
even looking at it from a religious perspective, the Nile played a very important role in their religion and what their belief systems were. So there's a lot to research, and I don't have a grasp of all that. And hopefully I invite the other teachers, if you will, to take a look at it, and I think it'd be a great discussion one day. Uh, but I love where we are, y'all. I love the fact that we're studying and seeing things, and we can tie things in because we have a broader perspective of not only who we are, but looking at the history of man, looking at our own history, and understanding ancestors, and being able to see the scriptures from a different set of eyes now, and tying these things together and bringing them to life to this century that we're in, this place that we're in, this time that we're in, and tying all these things. This is beautiful, and we walk in this strength. This is our strength, and so I love this. Embrace it.
May I say one thing?
Yes, sir.
I believe that as you were speaking about where we are and loving where we are, what came to me is this: we are midwives, and we have been aids in terms of helping to birth an understanding of who we are, nurturing the baby after the birthing of who we are. And now we have reached a place of maturation spiritually, where we have become what we deemed earlier as doulas, meaning that we have been charged with escorting the life of deception and the life of pain and sorrow, escorting it out of the earth. And I see that with the idea of the flag half-mast and the death of that administration. We are the escorts to remove it from this earth plane by transforming how people view it so that they can see it for what it really is through their eye and not their eyes. So in that regard, I see the journey as being a continuous what mission of being both a midwife as well as a doula in that regard. Because there is no death to truth. And the death to that which is not truth is simply a transforming of the mindset to one of life itself. Does that make sense?
It does indeed.
That's why I see us as being right now. I'm done.
Thank you. Good thought to take a pause on and remember your meditations. I love this. We're in a good place and the gratitude of who we are. Be grateful. Be grateful. And thank you. Thank you. And your energy, your questions, your comments, thank you very much. Until we meet again tomorrow evening. And the rest of you who don't make it, have an awesome week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are we meeting with California today?
Yes.
We are.
Okay.
Thank you for reminding that, Audrey. I may or may not be on, but yes, this is today. I am going to get back to the hospital in a few. Just got a couple of messages. Okay. All right. Thank you, guys.
I may be a bit late myself, guys. I got some things I need to take care of, but I forgot all about that. But thank you for the reminder.
Okay.
Okay. Have a good day, guys. Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.